We're now joined by Governor Buddy Roemer, former governor of Louisiana, and ran for president in 2012.
Don't bring that up, would you please?
All right, so Governor Roemer, tell me about the difference between when you ran and won as governor, because I'm really interested in how the political landscape has changed.
Yeah.
And when you ran for president, I mean, you were a long shot as governor too.
I was. Money's always an important thing in politics. Mm-hmm. You're not going to change that. Mm-hmm. But over time, it's gotten out of balance. It's become so important that it's everything. For example, when I ran for governor, I was a lowly congressman. Not yet 40, young, energetic, believed in Louisiana's potential. But other people ran who had qualifications, and we had 7 televised statewide debates. I did well in the debates. I liked them. I liked the fire and the passion. And I ran away with the election. It was a total surprise to people. I only raised about $1.5 million. The other people spent $8 million, $10 million. Money doesn't really win in politics, but if you can get in people's living rooms through television. The trouble now is that unless you raise the money first, you can't get on the debates. I ran for president 2 years ago. Now, there were other decent people running. I won't put them down, but I was the only person running who had been elected a congressman and a governor. Mm-hmm. I had worked in D.C. in the system, and I'd worked in Baton Rouge, the state capital of Louisiana. I knew politics, and I thought I might bring something to debate. Mitt Romney had only served 4 years in political office, all in Massachusetts. He didn't know Washington, and there were other people who had served as governor, like Tim Pawlenty, who had never served in Washington. So it was about half the candidates had Washington experience, the other half had state experience, but I was the only candidate that had both. Do you know I didn't get invited to a single national debate? There were 7, 8, 10 people running, and you would have think they would have tried a former governor, former congressman, a successful businessman, but I was not invited. So I would call and say, could I get on this debate? I need the exposure. And they would say, well, Governor, we'd love to have you because we heard you were a fierce debater, but you don't have 2% in a national poll. So I said, let me work on that. So I did. I got to 2%. I called again and I said, Gallup poll has me at 2%. They said, well, it's 3% now. So another couple of weeks would go by, I'd call, and so here's what they finally told me. Governor, you haven't raised $500,000 in the last 30 days. I said, well, I've raised $365,000. $100 is the maximum limit for me, and I take no PAC money and no super PAC. And they said, our rule now is that you have to raise $500,000 in 30 days. American politics, unlike 25 years ago, has gotten where money is the most important thing. It's out of balance, it's hidden, and the average American doesn't give 1 penny. It all comes from special interest, Jakes, I'm telling you.
So who makes that decision? Who tells you it's 2%, no, it's 3%, now we change it so it's $500,000? Who are those guys?
The sponsor of the debate, and the debates are sponsored by 8 or 9 different people. It could be CNN, it could be Fox News, it could be MSNBC. They've all sponsored different debates. It could be a New Hampshire organization in New Hampshire.
So that's really interesting because to me...
But they're coordinating. I'm telling you, if you think this is an accident, I don't think they wanted to hear my point. That there's nothing wrong with Washington that can't be fixed. It's not broken, it's bought. They didn't want to hear that speech.
So then I think that's exactly right. But so that gets to the really interesting question of why is the media working along with these special interests to shut other voices out? I mean, Rick Santorum was in the beginning was polling at 0.5%
below me.
Yes, and
I was excluded,
and he was a failed senator, had lost by 18 points fairly recently
in his own state.
Right, but he had money, so obviously money favors some of the candidates against others.
Not only that, He got on the national debate. Herman Cain got on and they each had their day. It didn't last long. There wasn't much there. But you can't get elected president now without being in the national debate. And they're using money as the screen to whether or not to let you in.
So the question is, why is the media helping them? Is it because they're run by a special interest in a
You've
sense?
just
that
answered your own question. They're all money organizations. They're big corporate organizations. Look, I'm not a plot and paranoid kind of guy. I like the fact that we have 100 channels to choose from. I like the fact that you're growing your presence in the media in America, and it's not driven by money. It's driven by hard work, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But at the top, it's driven by money. And if you were to have a populist candidate like me, who's won a lot of elections, when they let him on the stage, the best way to whip Buddy Roemer is to not let him get on the stage. And I think that decision was made early and often.
It's fascinating because, you're a Republican, Howard Dean is a Democrat, but Howard Dean faced enormous disdain from the media as well. And I don't believe it's a smoke-filled conspiracy room, but the way the machine works, where there's these implicit understandings of who is allowed and who's not allowed in the debates, is fascinating.
It's fascinating.
And on both sides has the same effect. Anyone who's going to actually challenge the system is not welcome. You're literally not welcome on stage.
The status quo never welcomes change. And when the status quo, the top 1 or 2 or 3% in our country are getting filthy rich off the status quo, they don't want to hear about change. Not at all. This election is about who do you like, Mitt Romney or Barack Obama. That's not the question. The question is, what set of policies can drive America forward, can keep our kids home, can create jobs, can make us competitive in the world? How can we lower the cost of health care for everybody, not just those who are on the outside? Everybody's paying too much for health care. How can we have a banking system that's open and competitive and fair? How can we have a tax code that you can actually read and understand with low marginal rates? How can we have fair trade with China rather than free trade? These are the issues. They were not discussed in the campaign, were they?
No,
it was all about Democrat, Republican, this person versus that person. I don't care who the next president is. I care that the next president loves America and works for its people. That's what I care about. And I think the thing between me and that goal is special interest money. That's who runs Washington.
So now what's interesting is that Democrats, Republicans that are actual voters, conservatives, liberals, libertarians, all agree. They hate the special interests. 87% say money has corrupted politics thoroughly, etc. But yet the moneyed interests won't let that 87% even get on the stage. So how do you fight back? And is there any hope for winning against this incredibly powerful force, both in the media and in politics?
We're going to win. It won't be about me. It'll be about us. We're going to win. We're going to change this system. That's why the Root Strikers are meeting here in Northern California, and I've been invited to make a small presentation and to be part of it. I wanted to come listen anyway. I've learned a lot. There's not one way to do this. It could be constitutional, it could be statutory, it could be a combination of both. But there's a group of us, 8 or 10 of us around the country, and I have more political experience than the other 7 or 8, but we're all committed, like Larry Lessig at Harvard and others. We're committed to coming up with different ways to get this achieved and then coming together finally with a plan, a solution. But here's what's missing. The American people are missing. I think they're overwhelmed with this money, and most Americans don't think they can do anything. Most Americans don't think they can make a difference. I'm telling you, if we could get 5 million Americans to give $100 to a candidate younger than me, better looking than me, whatever. 5 million Americans to give $100, we can elect a president. And that president's first priority will be campaign reform, because only if you kick the lobbyist out of the fundraising business, Only if you stop congressmen from being a congressman one day and then being a lobbyist the next. Only if we define what a super PAC independence is and change that. Only if we reduce PAC contributions to individual contributions. Only if we have full disclosure and 48-hour reporting. If we do those 7 things, we'll change this country and do tax reform, medical reform, trade reform, voting registration reform. We can change America. You know what we're missing? It's not Barack Obama. We're missing him. Yeah, we miss George Bush. We miss Bill Clinton. But that's not the problem. We're missing American citizens. And my message is, this won't change without you, but with you. We can change America with you. And all you've got to do is sign up for the reformproject.org. That's my organization. Or rootstrikers.org. Get involved. You won't be asked for a lot of money, but you'll be asked to give. Final point. The average American gives nothing, but complains for 4 years about the quality of the government. I'm trying to turn it around. Give a little, and you can change the system. 5 to 10 million Americans give a little. Watch out, America. We'll have a Theodore Roosevelt elected who said 100 years ago, he told the Republican Party, who are we going to be? Are we going to represent Wall Street and those who have? Or are we going to represent the small business, the police officers, the guys that build the roads? That's where I want to be. That's where America needs to be.
So it's interesting because you run a small bank, and it's a local bank in Louisiana, right. And the big banks on Wall Street have an enormous political advantage and financial advantage because of their political advantage.
Right.
Do you see a situation in which the small business owners of America say, hey, you know what, we're tired of getting run over by big business that hasn't competed with us in a fair and free market? They've gotten an advantage through purchasing their government officials, etc. Let's unite together and work with these campaign finance reform folks to make sure that we get back to an even playing field. Is that a possibility?
Absolutely. In every state, there's an organization designed to bring sanity to our politics. They're not designed to elect Buddy Roemer, to elect Mitt Romney, or to elect Barack Obama. They're designed to change the system. And it's bubbling up from each of the 50 states. You know, I got about $1 million in contributions. My average contribution was $15. I had tens of thousands gift money to me in my campaign from every state in the union. It's out there. There's a hunger. The week I resigned, quit, said I can't do it, I had 7% in the Gallup poll of everybody else but Ron Paul, Mitt Romney, and Barack Obama. This can be done. And we're going to keep agitating Congress to start making changes here and ask the American people to get involved. And so let me do it today. If you love your country and you think it could be stronger, more fair, more free, more open to your children and grandchildren, get involved. And by that I mean register to vote, and give a little money to an organization that will change this country. It could be the Root Strikers meeting today in California, but talking to a whole nation. Get involved.
So one last thing, how much of an advantage do the big banks, because that's your field of expertise, have over the small banks because of the contributions they've given to politicians?
Well, their advantage is that they're guaranteed not to fail. So that means they can do management decisions that make no sense. But if they're 1 out of 7 chance of being right and they're right, they make a lot of money. If they're wrong, the government picks them up and gives them a lot of money. So this is not the capitalist or free enterprise system. This is a phony, baloney, monopolistic, bureaucratic system. And the big banks are the problem. It's why I was the only candidate that occupied Wall Street with the young people. You know what they said? Something's corrupt here. Something smells. And I agree with it. The big banks have a government-granted advantage. They enjoy about a 50 basis points advantage on the cost of their money, and that money doesn't go back to the people who borrow money from them. It goes back to their own pockets. Do you know the head of these big banks can make 10, 15, 25, $50 million a year? We're paying the head of an organization $15 million a year, and the government is propping them up. That's a good job, Cenk. We ought to get it.
But it isn't capitalism, is it?
It's not capitalism. It's phony, it's contrived, and it's more expensive than you realize. The issues that brought us down in 2007, which was the elimination of Glass-Steagall under Bill Clinton in 1999, it's still eliminated. We're vulnerable to the same thing happening. It's only bigger now. Remember we talked about the banks being too big to fail and what a sin that was in 2007, 2008? Guess who's bigger now? The top 20 banks in America are 40% bigger than they were when they failed last time.
Well, I thought Obama was going to change everything.
Who? He's a great politician, but he's a lousy reformer.
Yeah, well,
Nothing's changed.
We can agree on that. All right, Governor Buddy Roemer, thank you so much for joining us on the Young Turks.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Good to be with you, man. Love what you're doing.